Welcome to Real Estate Coaching Radio, starring award-winning real estate coaches and #1 international best-selling authors, Tim and Julie Harris. This is the #1 daily radio show for realtors looking for a no BS, authentic, real-time coaching experience. What's really working in today's market, how to generate more leads, make more money, and have more time for what you love in your life. And now your hosts, Tim and Julie Harris.
Happy Valentine's Day, everyone. This is part 6, actually.
Yes, and this is Valentine's Day. A good way to wrap up our series about how to have a successful, happy marriage and partnership.
And this has been a pleasingly well-received podcast series from, the feedback. Based on all the feedback we got from all of you guys, we're going to be doing more content like this. And we're thrilled about it, frankly, because now we can start talking about more things other than, real estate stuff.
Real estate stuff,
or,
yes.
or overtly about real estate stuff. We do, I think, always do a decent job looping it back in to making this relevant about real estate. And in case you're listening to this part 6 and you haven't listened to the previous podcasts on this very topic, this topic was something that we get frequently asked about, Julie and I have been married for 31 years this year. And we've owned several businesses together. And the question we get a lot, especially from people that are married or have partnerships, they want to work together and they don't want to sacrifice their personal relationship, is how do we go about doing it? Well, listen to the previous five shows, and today is the final show on this topic. And you'll get an idea of how we've done it. And now it's not just Julie and I's personal advice to you. It is what we have learned from having between the two of us, we've had probably 250,000 one-on-one coaching calls over the years. And a lot of times you'll see relationship, these are our real estate businesses, right? Yours, ours, they're closely held small businesses in essence. Mm-hmm. And so it's inevitable that you're going to be intermixing business and personal life. It's part of the deal and you can't escape it. Matter of fact, probability of you being successful in your business is about 0 if you're not intentionally bringing in your personal life. Because if you try to keep it out, that's what's going to create the tension, trying to have some sort of fake separation. The reality of it is that a successful entrepreneur is not just a successful entrepreneur from 9 to 5. They're a successful entrepreneur 24/7. And if you then bring in your spouse, then you are now having to have that person adopt the same, I'd say, overall lifestyle and use the same operating system as you have.
Yes, I'd agree with that. And a special shout out to Robin, one of our longtime listeners and coaching clients, who has been sending this podcast series to her recently married daughter. So thank you for that text this morning, Robin. We appreciate you, and I hope that your daughter finds this useful. I think it's great to start out with these points and to have kind of a roadmap for how you want to handle your marriage, your partnership, etc. So thank you for mentioning that.
So before we get to point number 15 and point number 16, and I think these are I think both of these, frankly, are one of the two biggest points of the whole series. I can't say they're more important, but I think they're one of those. These next 2 points are things that people, if you only heard these 2 points, it probably would have encapsulated the last week. Exactly. Yeah. Well, just a quick reminder, if you have not yet enrolled as a Premier Coaching client, as a Harris Real Estate University Premier Coaching client, it's easy for you to do so. Just text the word Premier to 47372. Text the word Premier to 47372. And when you do, we're going to text you back a link that you can just hop on over to our website and you can become a Premier Coaching client, and for around $100 a month, depending on which path you choose. But again, it's something a lot of you have been listening to us for years. This is the #1 listened to daily podcast for real estate agents in the United States, at least. And we have listeners all over the world too. It's always kind of interesting to go into iTunes and go into the analytics and see all the different places we're being listened to. And so if you're yet to become one of our coaching clients, you like the podcast, obviously tens of thousands of you listen every day. What are you waiting for? Become a Premier Coaching client. Just text the word Premier to 47372. Now, if you are international, the text widget won't work, so just go over to timandjulieharris.com, click on Coaching, and the first option is Premier Coaching, and that is how you can become one of our Premier Coaching clients. But for those of you who are in the United States, just text the word Premier to 47372, and remember, message and data rates may apply. All right, Julie, so I'm going to read number 15. And number 15, I think, is really, really critically important. It's also the easiest thing to take for granted because people confuse goals with what would be essentially their urgent to-do list. In other words, you know what I mean?
Yes,
they're not thinking on a large enough scale. So point number 15 is share mutual goals. The #1 reason marriages fail is from not having shared goals: physical, financial, health, spiritual, educational, and family goals. Now, I know Julie wants to talk a lot about this because she's obviously had, she's been referred to as the #1 real estate coach in the nation. So she's got lots of good things to share. But I do want to put something in there about the word balance. Balance is a lie. And when you hear these are sort of I think the institutional way of thinking about goals. You have these 5 categories: physical, financial, health, spiritual, educational, and family. At no point in your life are you going to, or should you try to, have all 5 of those things in any sense of balance. Because just the very effort to try to put things in balance will cause you to feel burnout and get out of balance. And we're real estate coaches, and we're helping you build hopefully very profitable businesses. When you're building your real estate business, when you're setting goals with your spouse or your partner, one of the understandings of setting said goals are some of the other things are going to have to be taking a back seat to the pursuit of the financial goal of being a successful business owner.
That's true. I mean, if the financial part is off, then the other things matter less, because that will be your prevailing thought, is what's going on with the finances. And in our future podcasts, perhaps we'll do this week, but certainly in the next 2 weeks, we're going to present to them daily minimum standards as a topic that address those goals: physical, financial, health, so that you're doing something every day about those goals.
So the easiest way for you guys to get on the same page of goals is complete the real estate treasure map. It's very simple. It's not some wimpy, one-pager deal you can do with a glass of Chardonnay. This is something that you should print out, you should take very seriously, or just download it as a PDF and read it on your phone or your iPad or whatever. And then really do the work of completing all of the, frankly,
sections.
Financial triage that's necessary to understand all of it. It's intentionally a laborious process that'll force you to take seriously all of the aspects of your finances and really your goal setting in life in general. But really, the goals are the very North Star that will always remind you if you're on track or not. So if you're wandering, haplessly through your day and you're not knowing which direction you should be going, and this is the reason I said most people mistake to-do lists with goals, and all of a sudden the to-do list is go to the grocery store. All of a sudden the to-do list is do this, the other thing, immediate things. That's not really a goal in the sense of what we're talking about.
No, that's just survival, really.
Exactly. That's not going to give you any sense of direction and any real sense of purpose. So, for example, I received quite a few nice notes about the physicality aspects of maintaining a long-term relationship. And Julie and I were both a little nervous, especially Julie, about when we were saying that it's an obligation of both partners or both, spouses to not get unattractive. Over the years, it's sort of, it's easy to pack on weight and not give so much a hoot about what you look like, and you are essentially being disloyal to the commitment that your partner made to you and you made to your partner. So if you look like now granted, if you're, it's 1,000 years ago you got married, well, then you might have an excuse.
Right.
But for the most part, most of you are nothing like the wedding pictures from a few years ago or from maybe 20 years ago.
Or possibly the picture on your business card. Just saying.
But why is that? It's just because you've gotten a little complacent. Well, okay, so what message are you sending to the world and all that? We talked about that in a previous podcast in this series. But the physical goals are something that all of you guys can get on board with. And the previous podcast, we talked a lot about it. But that's one of the things that together you can be working on. And at the same time, the nice thing about, like Julie and I went on a 6-mile walk this morning. We were going a 6-mile walk. What did we talk about the whole time? We didn't talk about real estate, I promise you. We were talking about different things, different podcasts we were listening to. We were just talking about different conversations we've had with different people. We were just talking.
And running into friends and doing that sort of thing. But yes, you have to share your mutual goals. And the best way to do that is the treasure map, because you can do that together with your spouse, your partner. Some of our coaching clients bring their kids in if they're old enough to understand goal setting. So share those mutual goals. You can have some individual goals, but you also have to be on the same page.
So if you want the treasure map, and thank you for reeling me back in, text the word Harris. It's our last name, Harris. Text the word Harris to 47372. And not only will you be then given the treasure map to download and completely fill out, but it's also going to entitle you to a free coaching call with one of our new member coaches. So text the word Harris, Harris, to 47372. And remember, message and data rates may apply. But the setting of goals is the single most important thing that you can do, because it is now setting goals separately and setting goals as a couple and as a family. Those are all things that will, and they don't have to be a billion goals. And getting back to the balance thing, when you're working on your business, your financial goals, working together, assuming this is the purpose of you listening to this series, is work with your spouse or your partner. Finances are going to take probably the front seat, while maybe, for example, spirituality might take the back seat. There's times in your life when different things are going to have differing levels of importance and where you could be setting goals around each of those things. One of the things you should never let go by the wayside, again, is your finances and your physicality, your health in essence. Because if you do, obviously, you'll be maybe rich and famous, but you won't have much of a life because you're not very healthy. You guys get the point of it? But again, don't be suckered into believing that somehow magically you can have some sort of mythical balance in your life. There's so many books written about this. There's so many people that have tried to be fake gurus, trying to convince you guys you can have balance in your life. You really can't.
This is a moving thing. If you do a good job on it, you're going to actually achieve your goals, and then you're going to have to go back to your treasure map and reset them. It's meant to change.
So yes, you can have balance in your life if the only two things are important to you are, say, for example, spiritual and physical. If those are the only things that you're really focusing on, you have no family goals, you have no financial goals, you have no educational goals. You just want to go to yoga all day, and that's your primary thing in life, and that's what leads you. That's your only interest. Yeah, maybe that's, but for the most part, most people are going to need to have more sense of fulfillment and accomplishment, which is going to be encapsulated with focusing on physical, family, health, spiritual, educational, and of course, family goals. Now, let's just belabor this point because I've had so many people over the years thank us for it. Mm-hmm. But when you have kids and you're setting goals, set the goals with the kids. Make it so that the kids can hold you accountable, in essence, to doing what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it at the highest level. And we've recommended this for years because it's a hilarious way to go about doing it. We do it ourselves, though frankly, we're not doing it as much because Zoe's become quite abusive about it. But you can create. It is true. You can create a public. Just take an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, and mom and dad have to sell, say, 20 houses, and you're gonna, keep a log, a column essentially of house 1, house 2, house 3. And along the way, when house 5 is sold, there's a family payoff, some sort of thing that everyone wants to do. Mm-hmm. House 10, house 15, house 20, and maybe house 21 is a trip to Disney World. But if you tie the family into the accomplishment of the goals, then Johnny or Susie are going to understand if you can't make every single, soccer game, right?
And by the way, those of you who are searching for accountability partners, well, I'm just saying they're really good at holding you guys accountable.
And I'll give you this one last point before we move to point number 16. Is we mentioned this book before. It's not a book that anyone ever thanks me for suggesting because they all hate it, but it's a great book to listen to. How about that for an endorsement?
It's very practical.
It is. Profits aren't everything. They're the only thing. It's written by a guy's first name is George something. But just go to Amazon. You can find it, or just drop it into Google. And that's the name of the book. Profits aren't everything. They're the only thing. As every single small business owner, all of you, should absolutely read or listen to that book. We have no business relationship with it whatsoever. I suggest it all the time, and I've never had anyone say thank you for having me read it because of the fact that the way he delivers the message with regards to focusing all your best energies on your business. And if you're not, you're actually being frankly, in the case in his book, you're being a really crappy parent or partner or spouse. That's something a lot of people don't want to emotionally deal with. The only people that really are ready for his message are people that are absolutely serious about the success of their business. And what drives them to be successful isn't necessarily just their own sense of accomplishment and their egos, but it's wanting to take care of their families, right? So it's a transcendental type approach to business, but it does require sacrifice. It does require doing what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it at the highest level. So if you're looking to really understand that point completely, I would strongly suggest you listen to that book or read that book with your spouse or your partner.
Yes. So point number 16, don't betray your spouse. Now that's obvious with, infidelity, but it goes deeper than that. People can actually cheat on their spouse or partner in more ways than just with sex. Emotional relationship with others outside of your marriage, a partnership, can easily be a form of betrayal. That could be somebody you've become extra chummy with at the office, at the gym, at your kid's school. It manifests in different ways. And we've all had coaching clients that have had some semblance of that going on.
Give me an example.
Maybe they didn't realize it.
So, I don't even care if we tell them. So you and I helped start a chapter of the YEO.
Yes.
When we were in Columbus, Ohio.
Young Entrepreneurs Organization.
Right. It's a sister organization for YPO. I'm pretty sure both of those organizations have been since rebranded, but that aside. Yeah. So we helped establish the YEO chapter in Columbus. And Julie and I were in charge of recruitment, strangely enough, right? Okay, so Julie was put in, it was basically all men. There was a few women. It was just getting out of the ground. I'm just going to set the stage for the experience you had.
That's fine.
And so one of the elements of YEO and YPO is called the mastermind. And the mastermind structure is phenomenal. It's something that we've tried to copy in many of our private mastermind retreats that we do from time to time. But anyway, so I want you to tell them your experience being in that mastermind with regards to how they were oftentimes not understanding the point number 6 when it came
16.
to how point number 16 as they would refer as they talked about frankly their wives.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of things going on. I'm not sure exactly which story you're talking about, but I think it was young entrepreneurs, right? So I think you had to be under 40, but most of us were in our 20s at the time, and I was, of course, the only woman there. Through the mastermind, I would hear these guys like complaining about their wives and how they just stay at home and take care of the kids and this and that. And they found camaraderie in the mutual bitching about it.
Right.
And I thought, like even back then before we were who we are now, I still had the thought, aren't you setting mutual goals together? Didn't you have an agreement that, when your kids were little, your wife was going to be home? And why are you bitching about that?
But isn't that a form of betrayal?
It
Basically
is.
Talking crap about your spouse
Absolutely.
to your buddies. Isn't that bizarre?
And it was, as somebody who was supposed to be a business peer in a business organization, it was a huge turnoff to me as to them as a human being at all. Much less. And so because of that, I was not as receptive to some of the business conversations because I just thought, like, here's a very basic thing that you're kind of screwing up, And then the other thing I was thinking about was they would do retreats, and I'm not going to a retreat with a bunch of people like that. That's, anyway.
To the original point, though, you're speaking to the character of it all.
Yes.
But because
that you don't talk trash about your spouse.
But ultimately, it goes to the fact that the betrayal of your spouse or your partner isn't just the Jerry Springer variety.
No.
Betrayal is having what would be called inappropriate, intimate relationships
and conversations, even.
Exactly, and ever talking about your spouse with anybody other than perhaps a medical professional, but frankly, even then, and because it's just not appropriate. You're betraying your spouse if you talk shit about your spouse to really anybody. But let me just frame that out for you. If you're the types of relationships that are appropriate, like for you as a married person, just keeping it simple, once you get married, the besties type situation outside of your marriage and your spouse or your partner
is supposed to be your bestie.
That's it. That's not complicated.
And so that I see where you're going with all that. So that can be even commiserating with a buddy at whatever, coffee or the gym or what have you, about something that you don't like about your spouse or that you're going through with your spouse or that you wish would be different. It's not really appropriate to hang that out with somebody else, and that goes nowhere. Well, if you're having issues with that, and it's different when it's a coaching relationship.
People friends will often...
They'll try it.
They'll try it. They'll try to get you to talk. My guy friends will try to get me to talk about you because that's just part of the natural thing. They're not interested really. They're just, it's just...
Making conversation.
Exactly. And oftentimes I know that I don't have the level of friendship with some of these men that I would because I won't...
do the locker room chat kind of thing.
I won't. They're not locker. You don't know what locker room chat is, Julie, because you've never been in a guy's locker room. This isn't guy's locker room chat. Guys' locker room chat is, completely different. This is basically just people looking to have a mutual bitch fest, or really, to the point, betraying their spouse in that they're talking about their backs, behind their backs and asses. And I know you've had girlfriends try to do that before.
Yeah, and I don't think it's appropriate, I think that you should have a strategy. It's not that you shouldn't be friends with them at all and just, break up the relationship, but you should have a strategy to get out of that conversation.
Never have it in the first place.
Never have it. Don't invite it. I think certain people kind of walk around and spew conversation on you. I think that's kind of a personality thing that some people have. But maybe it's the coach in me. I always will say something like, well, what are you planning on doing about that? Or what do you feel about that? I turn it back on them because they're not going to get any commentary from me. I'm not going to participate in it.
But it's interesting, though. It becomes so normal to have a circle of friends that you feel it's appropriate to sort of unburden yourself with, where the reality of it, that job is, it's not just the job, but it's not just the obligation, but it's the honor of the person you married to be that person for you. And if you're not having those types of conversations in your relationship.
You shouldn't look outside of a relationship.
And you shouldn't look outside of your relationship because you are betraying that relationship. Now, maybe you entered into this relationship with somebody and you guys didn't have that clear of an understanding of what the guardrails were to essentially how to govern yourselves. And that makes, that's normal.
Yeah.
Well, it's
fixable, though.
But you'll find that a lot of the problems that you might have or the emotional feeling of disconnection comes from the fact that you are trying to connect to someone else other than your spouse. And it's fascinating that oftentimes the conversations that you're going to have, with friends and whatnot, that's going to be about your spouse or your partner are not positive. They're not going to result in some happy resolution because what people have a tendency to do is they'll then bring their, baggage into the conversation.
And their opinion.
Exactly. And the next thing you know, not only were you just having an inappropriate conversation, in our opinions, inappropriate conversation, but you're also then going to start hearing their stuff. And then guess what? You're violating, I think it was point number 2, where you're hanging out with people that have their own set of, relationship issues. And then now you're having relationship issues because you essentially absorbed their crap.
That's true. And I have to say, once you get on that slippery slope of those conversations, and then you're at a party later or a gathering later and people are drinking and it's getting late and, this goes nowhere fast. So it's best to just have that standard that you don't go there and you know how to get out of those conversations if you can.
And it's fascinating. Ultimately, if you think in your own lives, the people that are essentially following, especially the last couple of rules, maybe they don't do it overtly. Maybe they've never had a conversation with you about the fact that they're not going to ever have inappropriate relationships. Very friendship, inappropriate relationships. Now, some of you I know are going to have big offenses to that, but I just want you to think the context of what we're saying. So don't take it to an extreme just to discount this point. But the reality of it is that often is, again, another nice way to quickly destroy your relationship because you are resolving and working out your emotions with essentially somebody outside of your relationship that you did not take vows to always, be true to. And so then that person has become essentially your pseudo, like I heard people say things like work wife or work husband and all that. Those are all inappropriate types of relationships to have, full stop, if you want to stay married. Now,
I should say that I think there's a lot of value for a lot of people in doing premarital counseling through their church or their synagogue or, that's a very organized path. And a lot of our points are very congruent with what they teach. They'll start out with, tell me about your financial situation. Who's in charge of the checkbook? It's very valuable educational-wise before you actually get married. And I think that if you're not married yet and you're thinking about that, whether you're young or old or anywhere in between, I think you should look into that before you have to recreate something out of making mistakes early on.
So if you follow these basic rules, and Julie and I obviously could have come up with some more, and we probably could have combined a few, but when you follow these basic rules, you'll find that your ascension in life to essentially being able to accomplish mutual goals, it goes much faster. You're going to be able to accomplish more goals, set bigger goals. And, it's kind of shocking when I think about coaching clients that we've had for decades in some cases, and married ones especially, what they've been able to accomplish. And it's because they follow the rules of, especially rule number 15 and 16. They're going to share mutual goals and they're not going to betray their spouse.
Well, it's a true partnership is being on each other's side, having each other's backs, having mutual goals, going in the same direction. What's the old saying? Ride the horse in the direction it's going.
Yeah.
If you're both riding the horse or rowing the boat in the same direction, it happens faster and easier. And, one of the things that coaching clients complain about a lot is that they feel like they're in it alone and nobody's got their back. And, they're like this cowboy out there trying to do their business and who is encouraging them and supporting them. So that's something to think about from a spouse standpoint, is to have each other's backs and truly have that partnership.
I'm going to add a point 17.
Okay.
And I want to add this because I just had this message pop. I had someone text me, and it was, I'm not even going to share any of the nature of the text because I think it would be me. It would be inappropriate.
Okay.
But I'll tell you what the gist of it was.
Sure, the theme.
This person had normalized not having sex with their spouse.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay.
And Julie and I are not, family psychology. We're not experts. We don't have PhDs. But this is really something that happens too frequently as people get older, especially, is you normalize not having sex. And sex is really important. The purpose of sex is to stay emotionally and obviously physically connected. And if you stop having sex, what happens is you build up very deeply rooted Scars, emotional scars. So I'm going to give you guys a suggestion. And this is something actually we learned when we read a book by Dr. Laura Schlesinger, right?
Yep.
It's, I think, 10 stupid things couples do to mess up their lives or something.
Like that.
Because we listened to all those Dr. Laura books and whatnot. I mean, we've been married for 31 years, but we listened to all those. I don't know. I mean, when she was writing them back in the 80s and 90s. Yeah, multiple. But here's really the secret to that in particular, if you're wrestling with that. Assuming you, even if you think you don't want to have an intimate relationship, what you're losing by not having an intimate relationship with your spouse is more significant than, you're losing a lot of the aspects of being married and being in a meaningful relationship.
And it gets worse and worse and worse.
Physical, medical reasons aside, but here's just for example, because then, it can happen from either side of the relationship. People then could meander outside of the relationship looking for that a need for that human connection with somebody else, essentially cheat. So that's something.
And justify it because they hadn't been with their spouse in a while.
Exactly. So here would be a suggestion. Even if you don't feel like it, there's things that you can do. And this was Dr. Laura's advice. So I thought this was kind of awesome. This is what I told this person. I won't even say whether it's a man or woman that asked me.
Yeah, that's fine.
But there's things you can do physically, I think everyone will agree, that will, to yourself or to your spouse, that will, even if they're not psychologically in the mood, even if there's been a long chasm of time between when you were last intimate, there are certain physical things, I think we can all agree, that will cause the other person to, say, perhaps be stimulated to step away from the TV or to, maybe reconsider.
Perhaps be more interested in you.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
So so if you're not having an intimate relationship with your spouse or your partner, don't blame them. And assuming you want to change that, take the responsibility yourself and do something that's going to set the stage for the rekindling of your sexual relationship.
Well, and that was, if I recall correctly, her leading point was, don't blame your spouse, be the leader in the relationship. And if you expect to see that change, and I remember it was probably a call or something we were listening to where she actually said, do you act like, do you look like, do you sound like someone that you would want to be intimate with? And if the answer is no, then it's on you, and to own that. So I would agree with that. That's a really important thing.
And that's where all these points basically circle back to, is personal responsibility.
Yeah, and being present and being focused and having good communication, not hiding out from things, not letting things go too far. Because you could take any one of our points from the past 6 podcasts and say, when that's happening, probably you don't realize a lot of it. And then it catches up to you, like becoming unattractive, becoming uninteresting. That just doesn't hit you one day. That's a gradual thing. And so that gets back to being present, being conscious of what's going on, being introspective, being communicative with your spouse. And ultimately, I think the thing that ties all this together really is the mutual goal setting. Because if you have mutual goals and you're talking about them and they're posted and you maybe have your kids involved in some accountability of that, that makes you be present every single day, because you have to talk about how are your goals going with that.
So look at our just hitting the high points of some of these as far as the points we've gone over for the past week. All of these points, and you guys should go back and read these. Our notes are on timandjulieharris.com, and obviously you can listen to the shows. All of these points, the only way they're actually going to have any relevance to you, the only way they're going to benefit you, is if you take responsibility for them. And again, I'm thinking about, again, that message I got from the guy, I just said it, who basically has slipped out of the, he wanted to be intimate with his wife. And it all goes back to setting aside, blaming the other person, and taking complete responsibility. The taking of the 100% assuming responsibility for whatever the problem is for a lot of people an ego chasm that can never be crossed, because they want to feel like they're victims forever. So if you do not have the health, if you do not have the wealth, if you do not have the nature of the relationship that you wanted to have, if you don't have the business that you want to have, keeping this as close to our topic, our point of podcasting in the first place, if all of those things, whatever you want in your life, the best way for you to get what you want is to give what you want away, as pertains to this series, to your partner.
Even and especially if or when you don't actually feel that way.
That is the key right there. Oh, I love that full circle that Julie just drew, because it goes back to one of our Harris rules, which, by the way, I didn't tell you, we have over 500 5-star reviews
good.
now.
We broke 500.
Awesome.
Great.
Thank you, guys, we love your reviews of our book on Amazon. I'm sorry for not telling you that. Amazon's for sale. Amazon, Barnes & Noble. We love hearing you guys benefit from it when you, especially the verified reviews where people will read it or listen to it because it's available on Audible, and they'll get it, and they'll talk about how it changed their lives.
I like the stories about and the specifics. Yeah.
Right. But really, with all of our podcasts, all of our thousands of podcasts, and anybody who's ever said anything to you that's had an impact on your life in a positive way, it always goes back to 100% personally owning the result. So if you don't like some aspect of your life, the worst thing you can do is blame the other person. Even if, frankly, it's their fault, right? If they screwed up or something happened, you're going to have to take the lead in basically turning things around. Stop being a victim. And if you say, I don't like being a victim, or victim is, how did you react to what I just said? Internally, check yourself. When I said stop being the victim, are you mad? Are you insulted? Well, it's because you're stuck with the idea of being a victim. And a lot of people have trained themselves to feel like they're a victim. They're stuck in the idea that, they somehow they're stuck in some sort of, there's not enough to go around. There's not enough love. There's not enough money. There's not enough whatever it is. There's not enough time. There is. You have to start with yourself. You have to start with doing what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it at the highest level. I think it's Harris Rules number 4, to which the point I was trying to make. So that pertains not just to your business, but that also pertains to your personal life sometimes. And that's okay. Don't think your marriage and a long-term marriage, right? It's not supposed to, look, if you do the work, and it is work sometimes, of sucking up your ego, of doing what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it at the highest level, if you do the work, like Julie and I went on the 6-mile walk this morning. I did not feel like going on the walk. I mean, 90% of me didn't want to go, but I still went. And the reason I went is because I know the point of the damn walk isn't just to get our exercise in, but it's also for Julie and I to stay connected. That is the whole damn point of the walk. That's the same reason we intentionally schedule ourselves throughout the day. This podcast is a good bit of it too. Mm-hmm. We intentionally schedule ourselves throughout the day to spend time with each other, talking about rekindling and reinforcing all these types of thoughts. And you guys should do the same thing. You might have maybe your partner or your spouse, you're not working with them, and maybe they go on their job one day, every morning, and you go in your opposite direction. You can still use some of these points and pull it back in. Have them listen to this podcast. We are strong proponents of Dr. Laura Schlesinger, frankly. I mean, those are the books like I've had coaching clients who have had particular issues. It doesn't even matter. I mean, she's written books on everything, and I'll have Amazon will drop ship them a
practical.
book.
Very
totally
practical. And she doesn't mess around, so I think that we like her direct nature of how she goes about. It's not really coaching, but it's psychological coaching, maybe is what you would say. But she has a book on basically everything: men, women, marriages, kids. So it's a great resource, and also the business books that you've recommended. Profit Isn't Everything, It's the Only Thing. I still like The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. That's been updated a bunch of times for the sake of separating responsibilities in your business. I use that with coaching clients a lot. There's another book called Habit Stacking, where you kind of alluded to that without really realizing. Habit stacking is talking about marrying several habits together to make the execution of all of them easier. So our walk is great exercise.
Well, we write podcasts.
We write podcasts. We take notes with each other. We are social. We run into friends. We rekindle with each other. We reconnect with each other. So that is a form of habit stacking. The initiation was go on the walk, get your exercise. But we're also in the habit of doing these other things that reinforce that habit, and it makes it easier for you to be consistent. So I really like that book, Habit Stacking, and don't ask me the author's name, but it's Amazonable. All
right, I'm going to end today's show with, first of all, Happy Valentine's Day, and I'm going to tell you guys a true story. And again, this just popped in my mind when Julie was inspiring me with what she was saying. There was a couple, and I won't mention their names, who we'd coached for a long time. And they were, and at the time I was it doesn't matter the age difference, but there was an age difference of about 15 years probably. And they were having marital problems. And they flew to meet with Julie and I. We were speaking at some event, and they flew there, not for the event, but they wanted to speak with, specifically with me. Mm-hmm. And I remember sitting with them, and they, the body language was cold to each other. And this is a couple that, I'd mostly coached him. Occasionally I would speak with her, but mostly him. So I didn't know that they'd been building this void between the two of them. And these types of things happen in marriages, guys. You enter kids, enter business, enter money, lives, all this stuff. It causes sometimes the thing that they let go is the very thing that should have been the priority, which is the marriage. So they prioritize the kids. Remember, we told you guys not to prioritize your children over your marriage. They prioritize the business over their marriage. They didn't make the business and the marriage sort of having joint custody of the goals, if you will.
That's a good way to look at it.
Right. So they screwed some stuff up and where they were focusing, and now they were paying the price. And I remember sitting with these two, and I remember, I'm not, again, this was just coaching, but I asked them to describe without the other interrupting the other, and they weren't really interrupting each other. They weren't really saying anything. So I asked Bob. I asked Bob to describe the first time he saw Bobette. Right? Not their real names, listeners. And he went in to tell this whole story, and I kept on asking him questions. And she was sitting right there. And so I asked more and more questions, and not just I asked.
Not softball questions.
I did ask some marginally locker room questions because I wanted her to hear that he found her very sexually attractive. And I had them describe in great detail about, he started talking about her, how they were say different attributes. Okay. And they were, he went and he just started, he was resisting obviously because he wanted to stay in this victim mode. But then I had him he was looking and or at least I knew I was breaking free past his ego when he started looking up, looking at the sky, remembering when people generally speaking are thinking or they're remembering, they're looking up. I'm not throwing some NLP your guys' way. I'm just saying it's a fact. And so he was starting to do that. And he started to put himself back in that state where he originally met, where they originally fell in love and the whole thing. And she started to cry.
Yes, I remember this.
Yeah.
And you telling me about it.
Yeah. And then I had her do the same thing. And her story was the same because she remembered that exact same moment. But not with as much detail.
Yeah, but what you were doing there is you were bringing them back to their original attraction.
Right.
And reminding them of what's most important. But I think you did that really well because they heard it from each other. And you were the catalyst that made them reconnect and to stop going their separate ways.
Yeah, and it was incredible. It was an amazing moment for me, but it was a really amazing moment for them. And I remember I was facing them. They're both sitting next to me. And then I put my hand on his knee. Then I put my hand on her knee. And then physically they were connected, even though they weren't quite ready to be connected together with their own, bodies. And then pretty much they thanked me to this day for that. I've had several experiences like that.
And they've since come together and been successful. And I think I know who you're talking about.
You do.
They're together.
You do, yeah.
So it is Valentine's Day. And if you're having any of these thoughts about any of these points, it is your job to own it and to do something about it. And I'm sure, listeners, that there are many of these points that you already are well aware of and doing a really great job and setting a great example for your family and your spouse and your partner, however you're set up, okay? But if there are things that resonated with you, don't just do nothing about it. Do something about it, but it's all up to you.
We've given you plenty of yarns to pull on. We've given you plenty of books. Hopefully, we've given you, the whole point of the series was to give you guys some inspirations. And frankly, give us a break from talking about buying buyer leads in teams and branding and marketing and all the other goofy crap that
Zillow
basically,
and all that stuff.
I just all around the bend on this. So we did our 2022 and frankly 23 real estate market predictions and really economic predictions. And so far, look, I'm not ready to take our victory lap yet because it's only February. And if you're listening to this podcast and replay, don't worry about it. This is still relevant. But we were unfortunately pretty much spot on about everything. This inflationary cycle is going to cause all kinds of, basically we're going to probably have a recession.
Yep.
It's probably
things are going to change.
You're right. Interest rates are going to go up. Things are going to change. Things are going to start but here's what I'm looking forward to, frankly.
What's that?
And listeners, since we are real estate coaches and that is our genre, we'll go back and circle back to that. You're going to watch, one of our predictions was all of these little goofy assholery companies that have been basically spawned only from a hot seller's market. All these guys trying to sell you guys leads and branding and marketing, all these little, shiny object businesses, you're going to watch them all drop like flies in the next, really probably 6 to 12 months. How do I know that? Because they always do. they're the first ones to leave the market, because what happens is agents start looking down the barrel at, for example, in Austin, Texas right now, there's a total of how many houses for sale, Julie Harris?
672 actives.
Yeah. And the average, we have rentals there, so that's the reason we know that. And the average days in the market, Julie Harris?
Just 24.
And last year, the numbers were, in both cases, were double.
Yes, and even more than that, yes.
Yeah.
So we're going to do a series of podcasts that is drilling down even deeper on why it's so critical for you to be the listing agent, okay? I saw something posted the other day about what buyer's agents have for dinner, and it was basically a plate full of ice cubes, and it's not getting better for you guys. Your commissions are being driven down. It's super competitive. And we know that your challenge is finding active listings. We're going to help you with that over a series of podcasts.
You might not know that is your challenge, or should be your challenge. We do. You should all be focusing on becoming listing agents. You should all absolutely be repulsed by anybody who tries to sell you anything that's not going to be listing focused. Buying buyer leads, branding, marketing, those things are nice little extra frilly things you can have. They're sort of luxury thoughts. We're entering in a time in the economy and the housing market where, frankly, you don't want to have to. The luxury thoughts are things you need to set aside. You need to get back to really what the real point of real estate is, which is being a listing agent. And we're going to show you how to do that. That's the whole point. So we're going to do a podcast series on that. But it's fascinating to me to watch this economy change, watch the housing market shift, watch the winners. The people who are winning now, especially the listing agents, they're going to win at a higher level than ever before.
For sure.
Agents who have built their big businesses on buying leads and Zillow, Flex agents, and all the rest of it, and the referral fees are going to go up. All these types of things, they're going to see commission compression like never before. And a lot of these guys are going to struggle needlessly because they've been following this. Essentially a business model that only works in a certain kind of market. That market is changing, guys, and it's going to be very obvious in about another 6 months. So listen to your future real estate coaches, or maybe your present real estate coaches. Put all your best efforts every single day to becoming a listing agent. And of course, we want you to join our Premier Coaching Program. Text the word Premier to 47372. Text the word Premier to 47372. We will fast track you to becoming a listing agent. You don't want to be one of the agents, and this is what most of them will do, who towards the end of this year, actually it'll happen about July, they're going to say, well, I'm just going to write this year off. Now, they won't necessarily consciously say it, but they'll say it with what they're not doing. So they're just going to essentially write the year off. They're going to live off HELOCs or all kinds of, they're setting themselves up for a lot of financial turmoil. Whereas what they should have done is right now is they should have committed to becoming listing agents. If you're listening to this in replay, it's not too late for you. Become a listing agent. And we're going to do a series of podcasts on that. But really, we're not going to give you the drill down. We're only going to give you the overview because we have you for 30 to 45 minutes every day. And we got to get back to work as we do now. But the reality of it is for those of you ready to jump the line and become Premier Coaching members, just text the word Premier to 47372. You can join for around $100 a month. And remember, message and data rates may apply. So Julie Harris, I love you and happy Valentine's Day.
I love you. Happy Valentine's Day to you as well, and to all of you listening.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.